Have you ever wondered how an automation knows when to start working? You build a workflow, connect your apps, add some instructions, and somehow the system knows exactly when it's supposed to run. But how? The answer is something called a trigger. Understanding triggers is one of the first things you need to get comfortable with. So in this video, I'm going to explain what a trigger is, the different types of triggers you'll come across, and I'll show you some simple examples so you can understand how they work in a real automation. Let's get into it. What is a trigger? Let's start with the simplest definition. A trigger is an event that tells an automation when to start. Something happens and that something tells your workflow, okay, it's time to run. Think about your phone. Imagine you set an alarm for 7 a.m. At 7 a.m., something happens. Your alarm goes off. Time reaching 7 a.m. is basically the event that triggers the alarm. AI automation works in a similar way. Something happens. That event triggers the workflow. Then the workflow starts doing whatever you instructed it to do. You can think about an automation like this. A trigger leads to a process leads to an action leads to a result. The trigger is the starting point. Without a trigger, the automation doesn't know when it should begin. A simple real world example is this. Let's say you run an online business and you have a form on your website. Someone visits your website and fills out the form, and maybe they select that they are interested in your service. The moment they click submit, something has happened. That submission can become your trigger. So your automation could look like this. Someone submits a form, AI analyzes the person's request, information is saved to your database, an email is sent to the person. You receive a notification, and all of that can happen without you manually checking the form every few minutes. That's the power of automation. But remember, the first thing that started the entire process was the trigger. So we have different types of triggers, and we'll start with one of them, which is the form triggers. This happens when someone submits information to a form. For example, you could have a form that says, do you want to learn more about AI automation course? Leave your name and email. Then someone fills it out. The form submission triggers your workflow. So your automation could then take that information and send it to an AI model. AI could categorize the person as a potential customer. Then the automation could save their information in Airtable or Google Sheets. One simple form submission can start an entire chain of events, a schedule trigger. This one is really useful when you want something to happen at a specific time. Let's say you want AI to give you 5 content ideas every morning. You could create a workflow that runs automatically at 8 a.m. The schedule is the trigger. Another common trigger is an email trigger. Imagine you have an email address where customers send questions. Instead of checking your inbox constantly, you could create an automation that watches for new emails. When a new email arrives, there's a trigger. Then the AI reads the email. It could determine what the customer wants. Maybe it's a complaint. Maybe it's a pricing question. Maybe it's a request for information. AI can classify the email. Then your automation can decide what happens next. For example, a customer sends an email, AI reads it, and then after AI must have read it, AI identifies it as a pricing solution. Then a response is generated. This means AI is helping you handle repetitive communication instead of you doing everything manually. Now, let's talk about something that sounds more technical, webhooks. Don't let the name scare you. A webhook is basically a way for one application to send information to another application when something happens. As when there's a trigger, it triggers a webhook for one application to send information to another application. Here's an easy way to think about it. Imagine you have two people. Person A says, when this happens, I'll send you a message. Person B says, okay, when I receive your message, I will start working. That's basically the idea behind a webhook. For example, imagine someone makes a payment on your website. The payment system can send information to your automation. That information triggers your workflow. Then your automation can confirm the payment, create a customer record, give the customer access to something, and notify you all automatically. So instead of one app doing everything, different apps can communicate with each other. There's another important concept. Sometimes the trigger comes from another application. For example, imagine you are using Google Sheets. Someone adds a new role. That new role can trigger an automation. Your workflow could then take the information from that role and send it to AI. AI could summarize it. Then the summary could be sent to your email. So the flow becomes like this. The new role in Google Sheets leads to a trigger. From the trigger, the AI processes the information, then an email is sent. So again, the important thing to notice is that AI didn't start the workflow. The new role that was created did. And that's a very important distinction. So now here is where beginners sometimes get confused. They see a workflow and think every step is the trigger, but that's not the case. A trigger starts the workflow at the beginning. An action is something the workflow does after it starts. So let's use a simple example. Someone submits a contact form, that's the trigger. An AI analyzes the information, that's an action or processing step. The system sends an email, that's another action. So the information is saved to a database, that's another action. You have to remember this. A trigger is what starts the workflow, but an action is what does the workflow do afterwards. Understand? So let's build a simple AI automation together. Let's put everything we've learned together. Imagine I want to build an automation for my content business. I want people to submit content ideas through a form. Here's what my workflow could look like. The first step would be a trigger as someone submits the form as the first step. The second step is now you get the information. The automation receives the person's idea. For example, I want to make a video about AI agents. So the step three, AI processes the information. Information is sent to an AI model. I can tell the AI, take this idea and turn it into a YouTube video outline with a strong hook, five talking points, and a call to action. So step four, AI produces the results. AI creates the outline. So step five, another app takes the action. The outline could be saved automatically to Notion or Google Docs. And then step six is the notification. I could receive a message saying your new video outline is ready. And I didn't have to manually copy and paste anything. The entire process started because someone submitted a form. That is the trigger. Why are triggers so important? Once you understand triggers, you will start seeing automation opportunities everywhere. Think about the repetitive things you do every day. Do you receive the same type of emails? That's an opportunity. Do you collect information through forms? That's another opportunity. Do you manually copy information from one app to another? That's another opportunity. So, do you create reports every morning? That's also an opportunity. And do you repeatedly send the same messages to customers? That, of course, another opportunity. The question you should start asking yourself is what event could start this process? Because once you identify the trigger, you can start thinking about everything that should happen afterward. Here's the bigger picture, and this brings us back to the basic structure of AI automation, which is you have a trigger which triggers something, which makes something to happen, and it leads you to an AI. The information is processed, analyzed, classified, summarized, or turned into something useful by the AI model. So an action now is another application does something with the results. You get the outcome without manually doing every step yourself. So when you see an automation in Make, Zapier, or another automation platform, don't let all those boxes and connections confuse you. Start by asking one question: what triggered this workflow? Once you know that, follow the workflow step by step. What information came in? What did AI do with it? What happened next? Which application took action? And what was the final result? That's how you begin to understand automation instead of just copying someone else's workflow. So that's what a trigger is. It's simply the event that tells your automation to start. It could be a form submission, a new email, a scheduled time, a webhook, a new row in a spreadsheet, or an event happening inside another application. And this is one of the foundations you need to understand before building more advanced AI automations. In the next video, we are going to look at actions because knowing what starts an automation is only half of the story. The next question is what happens after it starts. Make sure you subscribe and follow along because we are building from the basics all the way to real AI automation workflows. I'll see you in the next one.